to get a video together just to sort of just recap a couple of things that I have learned over the last sort of week or so about that Exodus 15 matter that happened to me about the trees and the water and new beginnings, and just how I feel more than ever that this time loop is happening, this Genesis 1:2 to 1:3 moment, and that's where we are now. We're in Genesis 1:2 at the moment. I believe we're in probably maybe the second part of it, because there are some of us in the body of Christ who are representing where the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. But I just wanted to roll that in a little bit too, just with a couple of things that I've learned about the seed. So this video is going to be a bit of an overview, because I'm just finding at the moment that every day, every minute that goes past, and I study this more and more, things are coming into me more and more, into my temple more and more truths. And just in the interest of this being a diary, I wanted to get just a couple of these ideas down. So we'll start today, of course, with the Bible verse of the day. So it comes from the book of Romans, chapter 1, verse 20. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So he did it deliberately. There's a reason why we're all here. There's a reason why we're all doing this. And I don't know, just with every breath I take and every day that I spend now in this new life that the Lord's gifted me, I'm just finding out, I'm just getting closer and closer to the answers to these questions. And it's a responsibility I don't take lightly. The journey for me to get where I am today has been difficult. It's been torturous. I've been through a lot, but I'm here. And the Lord's brought me here. He's brought me out of bondage, and here I am, and I'm his vessel, and I will just keep working, trying to understand exactly what's going on in the Bible, with life, why we're here, the truth. I just want to get to the truth. That's all I want. Okay, so yesterday I did a video there the other day where I believe in Exodus 1:14 through 16. I believe that this was the moment, the Genesis 1:2 moment. There was a Genesis 1:2 moment. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them to serve was with rigour. And the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name was one was Shiphrah and the other was Puah. And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him, but if it be a daughter, then she shall live. To me, that's a very, very familiar sounding story. This is what I believe is happening today. So that's the Genesis 1:2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, where I think we are today, except to verse 17, but the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. So that's sort of us in the body of Christ today. That's the and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. That's that moment there. So if we go to, so I want to sort of talk about just the seed today and how that might roll into the Genesis 1:2 into 1:3 type thing that I'm talking about. So if we go to Genesis 11, and the whole earth was of one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to one another, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. And they said, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto the heaven, and let us make the name, lest we be scattered upon the whole face of the earth. So that's a Genesis 1:2 moment. That just feels like where we are today with SpaceX and NASA lifting their rockets and trying to get through the firmament, knowing that they can't, and the whole tower thing is that's there as above, so below, trying to recreate heaven on earth, and that's just where we are today. But verse verse 5, and the Lord came down to see the tower which were the children of men builded. So that's the Genesis, the end of Genesis 1-2 moment. So, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And then verse 6 and 7, and the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So that's the Genesis 1-3 moment. The Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, which is just what we read in Exodus there the other day, where Moses took the Israelites out of bondage, and what I and sort of what we're waiting on today. When Christ arrived, it was all the Genesis 1-3 moments. Now, if we go to the end of this, you can see, well, you've got a lineage. You've got the lineage that goes down all the way down to Abram at the time. And Abram, his father's name was Terah. Now, I've been wondering about all this, because if they were all of one union and one speech, that means they were all sort of, there was no seed, there was no hope. The New World Order was at its greatest. It's even, in terms of evil and darkness being upon the face of the deep, it was even grander than today, because here there just looked like there was no hope, and the Lord had to intervene. Or is it today? It kind of does feel like today, doesn't it? So, but it's going to get worse on the earth. But this is describing it at its peak, because the Lord scattered, and it hasn't happened here yet. So I guess that's the difference that I'm looking for here. And if we go to the book of Jasher, we can see in Jasher 7:49, and Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host. Now, we learned there yesterday that the host is the angel. Now, because this was the angel, so because this was the Tower of Babel, and they were all of one union and speech, and Cush had the skins at this point. No, Nimrod had the skins. He was running the world. He had the skins that he got from the Garden of Eden, from Adam and Eve, that was handed down to Noah in the ark, that Ham stole, was passed down to Cush, and Cush gave to Nimrod. He was. Now, what are these skins? I don't know, but they certainly seem to represent some sort of power gifted of the Lord. And Nimrod had them in these days. So this Terah was the prince of Nimrod's host. So he was the prince of Nimrod's angel, which would have been a fallen angel. It's probably this Ra that they talk about, the one that's, I can't think of the name of it. They call it this main one that they all love at the moment, their favourite one, Ra. I just can't think of the name of it, and it doesn't matter. But he was prince of that host, of that fallen angel. Was in those days very great in the sight of his kings and subject, and the kings and princes loved him, and they elevated him very high. So this is the father of Abram that was doing this. And then Terah took a wife, and her name was Amthello, the daughter of Corneblo, and the wife of Terah conceived and bore him a son in those days. Now, when I say this is sort of just an outline of where I'm at, these are the things that I'm going to go into and have a bit more of a look at as to who Cornebo was and who Amthello was, and that's sort of where I'm going to go after I do this, but I just want to get this down. Terah was 70 years old when he begat him, and Terah called the name of his son that was born to him Abram, because the king had raised him in those days and dignified him above all the princes that were with him. So there you go. So this is what's going on, and this is the world that Abram, the new man, because you have a look at the name Abraham, the Abraham in Esau, and his name means father of a multitude. So that's who this person was going to become. This Abram that was born into this world of the world being of one union. He was going to be a father of great multitude, the new man, the new hope, the new Genesis 1-3 moment. Now, something also that's caught my eye in Genesis 11, and it's caught my eye a few times now, is that you have a look at verse Verse 30. But Sarai was barren, she had no child. Now, I've seen this word barren come up quite a bit. It's like, what does this barren mean? So I put into my Bible Tools definition thing, and this site's really good because it'll show you all the time that Hebrew word appears in the Bible, in the translated KJV Bible. And I have a look at some of these verses, and the obvious one is you come to Rebecca. You come to Rebecca, the wife of Isaac. She was barren, and then so was Rachel. So Rachel was the one who begat Joseph, who was the favourite. So Rebecca was barren, Sarai was barren, and Rachel was barren. And I just know, but it hasn't gelled yet, I just know this comes into the birth of Jesus. It's all aligned, and it all comes back to this mingling of the seed and stuff. Because I found a verse in Nehemiah. I read Nehemiah again. Nehemiah. I read Nehemiah again yesterday. Just brilliant. What a marvelous story. So he was the king's cupbearer, and he got a calling from the Lord, and he ended up becoming the governor of Judah and rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem when all around him were just laughing at him. And an amazing story. And he got them all together again, and he got them all adhering to the law again and got them all on side. Just an amazing story. But there's something about Nehemiah, for me and my calling. I'm telling you, there is just something about Nehemiah. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about Nehemiah. Nehemiah 13, 23, 24 and 25. In those days I saw Jews that had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab. And their children spake in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the speech of each people. And I contended with them, and cursed them, and smote certain of them, and plucked off their hair, and made them swear to God, saying, You shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take of their daughters unto your sons, or for yourselves. So I found that really interesting. So this is telling me that the daughters of Israel cannot mingle with anyone else, and the sons can't mix with their daughters. So it's pretty definite. So there's a real division here, and I know who the Ammonites are. I know who Ammon and Moab are. They were when Lot and Abram split in about Genesis 15, in Genesis 19, at the end of when the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. This is when Lot went to a cave with his two daughters, and his two daughters defiled him, and they gave birth, and the name of those sons born Ammon and Moab. So I know who they are. The Ashdod, I'm not sure who they are. Probably giants, I'm not sure. But there's a real thing going on here with the seed having to be pure, and that just brings me back. Then to this whole thing about these women being barren, because if they're barren, that means they haven't been defiled, or they haven't been there. Does that mean they're virgins still? They're not. Well, no, it doesn't. It just means that they can't give birth. They're sterile. They can't give birth at all. And that to me just comes back to an immaculate birth, because in all of those scriptures of Sarai becoming pregnant with both Ishmael. So who's Ishmael? I've got to get to Ishmael. I mean, who's Ishmael? But because you've got the seed going on, but then the Lord gave Sarai Ishmael, and then Isaac, and then Rebecca was barren, and she gave birth to Jacob and Isaac, Jacob and Esau, and it just seemed to split off again. That was where the battle of spirit and flesh seemed to start. And then you come down to this birthright thing, which I'm not going to get into in this video, because I just want to get a bit of an outline, just get my thoughts down of where I'm at, where I'm sort of going with all of this, just with all of this lineage and who's who and why it was all important. And because to me, it's like the Lord was clearly getting it ready for all of this, all the 12 tribes of Israel, and the handing down of the law, and the Numbers 789, where he sat upon the mercy seat between the cherubims. And that was the beginning again. That represented the Garden of Eden. That's where the Lord went, right, we're getting it right back to the start. And that's why this seed was important. But I just don't get the significance of Jacob and Esau yet. I don't think to its full, because does that go to free will? Does that go to the flesh and the spirit type of thing? And the Lord was trying to rid the world of the Nephilim. Is that what it was all about? Because if you go to Genesis 10:3, something sort of leaping off the page to me here in Genesis 10:3 now. So I'll start at Genesis 10:1. Now these are the generations of the son of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Marchesh, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togomar. And the sons of Javan, El, Ishar, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. But these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. So that tells me that the sons of Japheth are the Gentiles, because in the Old Testament there were Jews and Gentiles, weren't there? But yet Noah had 3 sons. So Shem's got the lineage that goes back to, that goes down to Abram, which goes to the 12 tribes of Israel. But I don't know whether that means the whole of Shem's seed was a good seed or not. Don't know. These are the things I'm going to have to study more, and I'm going to study more. But then you've got the lineage of Cush, which bear down to Nimrod, who I'm starting to think could have been a giant. Because just the stories you hear about Nimrod and Tammuz and I can't find anywhere the wife that Noah took to begat Cush, or the wife that Cush took to begat Nimrod. I can't find any of that. I can't find that anywhere. But I do find a verse, I think it's in Genesis 12. This one's always been a bit of a mystery to me. Genesis 14. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar. I'll just leave it there, because king of Shinar. So if we go back to Genesis 11, and it came to pass that they sojourned from east to west, and they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Now, that to me sounds like this. Well, that's the same place. That's the same place as I just read out. That this Amphrael, king of Shinar, he was the king of that same place in Genesis 14. So I'm thinking, because after the fall of the Tower of Babel, they were all scattered, but they were, I don't know, what had changed? Because Abram was still just Abram. There was no 12 tribes of Israel yet. So I'm like, what's going on here? So if you go to Jasher 7:44, and Nimrod dwelt in Shinar, and he reigned securely, and he fought with his enemies, and he subdued them, and he prospered in all his battles, and his kingdom became very great. So I'm really starting to think at the moment that Nimrod could be this same person that we read about in Genesis 14, this Amraphel. Now, Esau doesn't really give us any clues, but to me, Nimrod had to have gone somewhere, because or did he just go nowhere? Because there's no more mention of him in the Bible, but it does go on and on in Jasher. He does go on and on in Jasher, and he's ultimately killed in Jasher. I think it was verse 27. He was beheaded by Esau in Jasher. So I'm starting to think that this character that we're seeing here in Genesis 14, who was the king of this place, I've got a feeling that it could be the same person, because when the Tower of Babel fell, all their languages was confused, weren't they? So perhaps he was known by a different title, because it happens quite a lot in the Bible where the same person's got a different title. And right through this scripture, there's talk about Rephaim and just names that to me just look like giants. So what I'm thinking at the moment is that the seed of Japheth, they were the Gentiles. The seed of Shem, they were the Israelites. They were God's people. And then you've got the third, which is the seed of Ham. They were the giants. They were all this seed that came from the skins, that came from the labs that we see today. The giants that they kept going to war with in Deuteronomy. That I assume I'm just going to keep reading about it in Joshua. So it's all, I don't know whether it's starting to gel here. I'm praying on this a lot, because I really want this to click, and I just feel as though I've got all of these sort of things that I'm working on: the water, the sea, the Genesis 1:2, 1:3 question, the seed, all of this stuff. I just feel as though are gradually, and the Nephilim and the Rephaim, and who are they today, and I just feel as though it's all just starting to come together. And then I read that part in Nehemiah where it says that you can't mix and mingle, and then that's the consequence of Lot being defiled. So Lot didn't do that. That was his daughters who forced himself on him, and that created Moab and Ammon, and Ammon to me seems to be giants. I'm not sure of that, but Moab seems to be like the Molech, the milk that you see today, that whole child sacrifice thing. That's what that seems to be. That seems to be about, because I saw a scripture there the other day where it talked about where they're never allowed back in. The Ammonites and the Moabs, they're never allowed back in. But then, and I'll leave this video here, but as I say, this one's going to raise more questions than answers. This is more just me. It's a diary. I'm putting things down. This is where I'm at. If anybody out there's got anybody but for the Lodge of Wisconsin, I sense the Lodge of Wisconsin are very, very active again, and I know what you're doing. I can see it a mile away. So I don't want to hear from you, but you keep going. Just keep going. I am tiring of you. I'm tiring of you and your games. I'm just a guy who wants to get to the truth, and you're just heightening my resolve, and you're heightening my senses that I am actually somebody in the body of Christ, because you are giving me a lot of attention. Genesis 38. Now this is a story all about Judah. So Judah went down, and I find it interesting to the language that I believe that these locations also are, they're a spiritual place, they're a spiritual destination as well. So in my old life with my grand affliction, if I wanted to act on that, I would now go down to Oxford Street, because it's a place that's spiritually under where I dwell today spiritually. So I'm thinking I'm dwelling in Jerusalem. I'm not sure about that, but let's say I am. I'm dwelling in Jerusalem, so I would now go down to that place, because it's not a place. It's a diminished place from where I am now. And I might go with somebody that I love. I might go and they're doing something that's of the flesh, let's say. We're going, to the shops. So to buy things that we don't need, and I'll just go for them for the day just to keep them company, or for me to have their company or whatever. that means I'm going down to that land which would have the name of so-and-so. So that's sort of what I'm starting to think, because you see it quite a lot where they go down and then they go back up to Jerusalem, and it's always up and down and mountains and valleys. And I don't know, I'm just sort of picking that theme up because I believe, I've said this before, that I believe these places, yes, these stories probably did happen physically, but they also represent a spiritual destination as well. And this is interesting because Judah went down from his brethren and he turned into a certain Adulamite whose name was Hirah. Now, that name Adulamite, to me, that just doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound like it's the seed that the Lord would want Judah doing. So, Judah, what are you doing? What's going on here? But anyway, Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite. Now, this can't be good. What's Judah up to here? Whose name was Shuah, and he took her and went into her. And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And then she conceived again, and Judah took a wife whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. So it's like, oh, what's going on here? So the Lord is not very impressed with what Judah's up to, because it doesn't seem very, I don't know, it doesn't seem great what Judah's doing here. Verse 10, and the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. So the Lord's slewing these offspring of Judah. And Judah's one of the 12 tribes of Israel, because Judah's did exactly what Nehemiah said not to do. And Nehemiah is a man who's steadfast in the Lord. And it was Ezra. So he was with Ezra. Ezra was the priest, and Ezra read out the law again to the house of Judah. Funnily enough, it's a funny old thing, to the tribe of Judah, because that's where Nehemiah was the governor in the book of Nehemiah. He's laying down the law at the request of Nehemiah, and that was the commandment. That was the commandment, that the daughters do not go on to them and the sons don't go on to them. And this is what Judah's doing, and he slew them, but he didn't slew all of them. So there's something happening here. But this whole thing is just all about this story, and I can't work it out because I don't know who the characters are, and I'm not sure of who the different places are and who the different types of people are. I'm not sure of all that, but there's a couple of things that really stood out to me here. Verse 14, and she put her widow's garments off from her and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself and sat in an open place which is on the way to Tinmath. See? So she's in an open place which is on the way to Tinmath. And she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. And Judah saw her and thought her to be a harlot, because she had covered her face. So there's something about this veil and the harlot seed, and you look at the end of the last verse and I'm like, whoa. And afterward came out his brother. Oh no, hang on. You come down to have a look at the birth, verse 27 down. And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. So I'm like, hang on a minute, what's happening here? So she wasn't barren, there was nothing like that, but Judah's up to no good. Judah's up to no good here, because he's sojourning down from his brethren, and he's taken a Canaanite woman, and the Lord's slewing them. So this isn't good what Judah's doing. And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that, behold, this brother came out, and she said, how hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So it's like, I don't know what all this means, but it's mixed up with all this seed and all of this stuff right now that I'm working on, and I will make this the last one that I read out, because this one just knocked my socks off. It absolutely knocked my socks off, this one, because it's the same thing. So it's all about this scarlet woman that helped the two messengers that Joshua sent into the land of, I'm not sure where it was it Canaan? It was actually Jericho. It was in Jericho. And this is where I'm reading in the Bible at the moment, and this is what really pricked my interest and led me back. The story in Judah, I remember reading that last week, and I thought that was a bit weird, and I just remember the word scarlet, and I saw the word scarlet again, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. But it was all about, now when they're doing the deal, when they're to say that this harlot helped out these two messengers and hid the two messengers, and he ordered that they would be killed. So this harlot hid them, and the deal was, so it says in verse 18, behold, when we come into the land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which thou didst let us down by, and thou shalt bring thy father and thy mother and thy brethren and all thy father's household come unto thee. It's like, okay. And then verse 21, and she said, according unto your works, so be it. And she sent them away, and they departed, and she bound the scarlet line in the window. Okay, so that's where I'm up to in Joshua right now. So I'm just going to spend my time over the next few days continuing on in Joshua, because I'm thinking a lot of my questions are going to get answered there. And also I've got to go back and revisit a whole heap of stuff in Genesis. I'm going to start researching the seed in Genesis 10 and what all that means, and hopefully that it all might start to make sense. And hopefully I might start searching Joshua as well to see if I can find if Nimrod and this character in Genesis 14 are the same person, because I'm just thinking they are. Where I am right now, I'm just thinking they are. And that whole chapter is just about, to me, it's just all about Rephaim and giants and Nephilim and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just really, my senses are just a fever pitch that Nimrod was a Nephilim, and that was a result of the skins that the Lord gave Adam and Eve in the garden after they had sinned to protect them. And those skins, somehow, they're some sort of mighty weapon or some sort of mighty thing of the Lord. So that's where I'm at. So I've got a lot to consider, a lot to go over. And that's what I'll be doing over the next few days, is just studying all of this, trying to make sense of it, praying to the Lord. And it's amazing. The Lord's just putting all of these ideas, all of these thoughts into my head as I'm sleeping. It's just unbelievable. I read all of this stuff in the Bible all the time about the Lord come onto people in their dreams, and I'm dreaming things, and I'm waking up and going straight to the scriptures, and it's all aligning with what I dreamt. So it's just incredible what the Lord is doing to this humble 45-year-old from the Central Coast vessel of He. So as usual, I welcome any comments. Please keep them coming. Whether you think I'm on track or not on track, let me know. But this is where I'm at in my little diary of my walk with the Lord Jesus Christ, who too, of course, goeth all the glory.
Change your mind, the sun has come. You've been left behind.